I've been carrying other people's mail for 11 years, and in that time I've learned one thing that most people never think about. The postal system is, at its foundation, a promise. You write an address, you trust that address corresponds to a real place, and you trust that a person like me will find it. That's the entire contract. Sender, location, carrier. 3 points of faith. And for most of my career, that faith was justified. Every address I was given existed. Every name on a mailbox belonged to someone. Every road on my route was a road I could find on a map if I needed to, though after a few years you stop checking maps entirely. You just know. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand what it meant when that faith broke. Not dramatically, not with some screaming revelation. It broke the way a bone breaks under slow, constant pressure, a stress fracture you don't feel until you try to put weight on it and your whole leg folds. My name is Darren. I'm a rural mail carrier for the United States Postal Service, based out of a small office in Harlan County, Kentucky. I was born here, grew up here, married here, and as of 7 months ago, divorced here. That last part matters. When Rachel left, she didn't go far. She moved 11 miles to her mother's place in Cranks, but 11 miles in Harlan County might as well be another country when every road between you is the road you used to drive together. So when Milo Kessler, the other rural carrier in our office, broke his ankle stepping off his porch in January, I volunteered to take his route. Nobody asked me to. My postmaster, Donna, actually tried to talk me out of it. Milo's route was the long one, Route 7, which climbed into the hills past Everts and wound through a series of hollows that barely had names, let alone reliable road markings. It added 2 hours to a workday and the pay differential was negligible. But Milo's route went in the opposite direction from Cranks, and that was enough for me. I wanted new roads. I wanted to stop recognizing every curve and ditch and mailbox as a landmark in a life that had just fallen apart. Donna approved the temporary reassignment on January 14th. I started Route 7 the next morning. The first 2 weeks were uneventful in the best possible way. Milo's route was long and winding but strangely beautiful in winter. The hills folded over each other like sleeping animals under thin frost. Most of the stops were ordinary, elderly folks in hollow-side houses who got prescription deliveries and seed catalogs, a few younger families who ordered everything online because the nearest real store was 40 minutes away. I learned the roads quickly. I learned the dogs faster. I learned which mailboxes had wasps nesting in them and which driveways would swallow my tires if it rained. I had Milo's route book, a battered spiral notebook where he'd kept decades of notes. Road conditions, customer quirks, gate codes, which houses had hostile animals and which had friendly ones. It was meticulous, almost obsessive. Milo had been carrying this route for 22 years, and his notebook read like a census of the hills. I studied it every night at home, memorizing his shorthand, and within a week I could run the route almost as efficiently as he could. There was one page in the notebook that I didn't understand at first. Near the back, past all the route notes, Milo had written a single entry in handwriting that looked different from the rest, smaller, more careful, as though he'd been writing slowly. It said, Grainer Hollow. 1 Stillhouse Road. Packages only. Do not hold. Do not return. Do not open. If no mailbox visible, leave at post. Do not wait. Do not look for house. Recipient will collect. Below that, in even smaller writing, she knows when you're coming. Don't let that bother you. I assumed this was one of Milo's eccentricities. Rural carriers develop relationships with their routes that border on superstition. You learn that certain roads flood on days the weather report says dry. You learn that some customers seem to know you're coming before you arrive. They're standing at the end of their driveway with coffee, like they heard your engine from a mile off, which in the quiet hills they probably did. The note about Grainer Hollow seemed like more of that, just with a slightly ominous flavor that I chalked up to Milo being Milo. He was a serious man who sometimes enjoyed making things sound more dramatic than they were. I didn't deliver anything to Grainer Hollow for the first 3 weeks. Then, on February 6th, a package showed up in my morning sort. It was a standard priority mail box, medium flat rate, addressed to E. Fenn, 1 Stillhouse Road, Grainer Hollow, Kentucky 40831. No return address. Properly stamped. The weight was moderate, maybe 4 or 5 pounds. Nothing about it was unusual except that the zip code, 40831, didn't correspond to any area I knew in Harlan County. I checked. Our zip codes run 40801 to 40874, with some gaps, and 40,831 fell in one of those gaps. It didn't correspond to anything. Not a town, not a post office, not a decommission code. It was a number that, according to every database I could access, had never been assigned. I brought it to Donna. She glanced at the label, then at me, and said, "Oh. Yeah. That goes up Grainer. Milo handles those." "I'm handling Milo's route," I said. "Then you handle it." She went back to her computer. "Donna, the zip code doesn't." "Darren." She looked at me over her glasses. "It goes up Grainer. Take Cali Fork Road past the Eversole Cemetery, bear left where the road splits at the Dead Oak, and follow it to the end. You'll see a post. Leave it at the post. Come back." The way she said it, flat, rehearsed, final, told me she'd had this conversation before, probably with Milo, probably more than once. It also told me she didn't want to have it again. I loaded the package into my vehicle that morning and ran the route in order. Grainer Hollow was the last stop, the farthest point on the route, and I reached the turnoff at Cali Fork Road around 2:30 in the afternoon. The road narrowed almost immediately, and within a quarter mile the pavement ended and became packed gravel, then packed dirt, then something that was barely a road at all, 2 ruts worn through dead grass with a spine of weeds growing between them. The hills closed in on both sides, not dramatically but steadily, like cupped hands. I passed the Eversole Cemetery, a small fence plot with maybe 30 stones, and continued to the split at the Dead Oak. Left took me down into the hollow proper. The road, if I can keep calling it that, descended at a grade that made me nervous, and the tree cover thickened until the winter light, already thin, became a gray suggestion. I drove for maybe 10 minutes. I saw no houses. No mailboxes. No power lines. No tire tracks other than what might have been very old ones, half erased by weather. The silence, when I stopped the vehicle and rolled down the window, was enormous. Not peaceful silence. Structural silence. The kind that feels like an attribute of the place itself, as though sound had been gently but firmly escorted out. At the end of the road, there was a post. That's exactly what it was. A wooden post, maybe 4 feet tall, driven into the ground at the edge of where the road gave up. It was old, gray, weathered to the texture of bone. There was no mailbox on it. No sign. No house visible in any direction. Just the post, standing in a small clearing where the ruts ended and the woods began, and beyond the woods, the hollow descending further into a darkness that the pale winter sky couldn't reach. I got out. I placed the package at the base of the post, leaning it against the wood the way you'd lean a package against a door. I stood there for a moment, listening. The silence pressed against my ears like altitude pressure. I had the irrational but overwhelming sense that I was being observed, not by a person hiding in the trees but by the hollow itself, by the geometry of the place, the way the hills angled and the trees leaned and the shadows pooled. It felt like standing inside a cupped ear. Then I left. I drove back up the hollow, past the cemetery, back to the paved road, and I finished my day. That night I made dinner, watched television, and thought about Rachel exactly as much as I always did, which was constantly, and I did not think about Grainer Hollow at all. That's not true. I thought about it once, right before sleep, and what I thought was, she knows when you're coming. And I wondered who she was. The second package arrived 8 days later. Same flat rate box. Same address. Same absent return address. Same impossible zip code. I delivered it the same way. Down Cali Fork, past the cemetery, left at the dead oak, to the post. The first package was gone. I set down the second, and I left. This time the silence felt different. Denser. Closer. Like it had taken a step toward me since my last visit. The third package came 4 days after that, and with it, something changed. When I picked up the third package during my morning sort, it was heavier than the first two. Maybe 8 pounds. And it was warm. Not hot, not like something heated, warm the way a living body is warm, a faint radiant heat that I could feel through the cardboard when I held it against my forearm. I told myself it was sitting near a heating vent in the sorting area. I told myself that for the entire drive. At the post, I noticed something new. There was a package waiting for me. Not a delivery, a pickup. A small padded envelope sitting on top of the post, addressed to me. Not to Darren Combs, Rural Carrier, Route 7. To Darren Combs, 19 Poplar Street, Harlan, Kentucky 40831. My home address. With the wrong zip code, 40831 again, the impossible one, instead of my correct 40831. Wait. I stared at it. My zip code was 40806. It had always been 40,806. But looking at the 40831 on that envelope, I felt a lurch of confusion, because for a moment, just a moment, I couldn't remember if that was right. I couldn't remember my own zip code. The feeling passed. I picked up the envelope. It was light, almost weightless. I set down the package I'd brought, and I drove out. I opened the envelope in my vehicle, parked at the Eversole Cemetery where the light was better. Inside was a single photograph, printed on matte paper. It showed my kitchen. My kitchen, in my house on Poplar Street. The angle was from the doorway, looking in toward the sink. The light was morning light. On the counter beside the sink, there was a mug of coffee and a small plate with toast crumbs on it, and the arrangement was so specific and so familiar that I felt my stomach drop, because I recognized it. That was my breakfast from that morning. I'd had coffee and toast. I'd left the mug and the plate on the counter beside the sink because I was running late. The photograph showed my kitchen as it had looked approximately 4 hours ago. I sat in my vehicle for a long time. I examined the photograph. It was not a digital printout, it had the texture and weight of a real photographic print, developed from film. The color was slightly cool, slightly blue, the way old film stock renders indoor light. There were no fingerprints on it that I could see. There was nothing written on the back. I drove home. I walked into my kitchen. The mug was where I'd left it. The plate was where I'd left it. The angle, the light, the arrangement, it was exact. Someone had been in my kitchen that morning, or someone had seen it, or something else that I didn't have a framework for. I locked my doors that night for the first time since Rachel left. I checked the windows. I checked the closets. I found nothing. Nobody had broken in. There were no footprints, no disturbances, nothing missing, nothing added. Just the photograph, which I put in my bedside drawer, and the memory of warmth radiating through cardboard. I should have told someone. Donna, the police, anyone. But here's the thing about slow strangeness, it doesn't trigger the same alarm system as sudden danger. A man breaks into your house, you call 911. Someone leaves you a photograph that shouldn't exist, you put it in a drawer and lie awake trying to rationalize it. You tell yourself there's an explanation. Hidden camera. Prank. Something Milo set up before his accident as a joke, though Milo had never once made a joke in the 11 years I'd known him. The fourth package for Fen came 3 days later. With it, another return envelope was waiting at the post. This one contained a handwritten note on plain white paper. The handwriting was small, neat, feminine. Darren, the thing you lost is not what you think it is. You think you lost Rachel. You lost something else. Rachel was a symptom. Come down past the post next time. I'll show you. I stood in the clearing, holding the note, and the silence of Grainer Hollow pressed against me like water, and I felt two things simultaneously. The first was fear. Clean, simple fear, the kind that tightens your breathing and makes your hands cold. The second was a terrible, pulling curiosity that felt less like wanting to know and more like needing to know, the way you need to breathe. The note had named the exact center of the thing I'd been circling for months. Since Rachel left, I'd been telling myself a story about what happened. She fell out of love, she wanted something different, the marriage eroded. But underneath that story was an older unease, a sense that I had lost something before Rachel, something I couldn't name, and that Rachel leaving was just the visible collapse of a structure that had been unsound for years. Whoever wrote this note, Fen, presumably, had reached into that private darkness and put her finger on it. I did not go past the post. I drove out. But I kept the note. That night I called Milo. He was home, his ankle in a boot, watching television. We made small talk. I asked him about Route 7, about specific customers, about road conditions. Then I asked about Grainer Hollow. The silence on his end lasted long enough that I thought the call had dropped. You've been delivering there, he said. Not a question. There have been packages, yeah. Okay. Another silence. And you've been picking up. There have been things left at the post. Things left for you. Still not a question. I didn't answer. Listen to me, Darren. Milo's voice was careful, measured, the way you speak to someone standing near a ledge. You deliver to the post. You pick up what's there, because that's the job, we don't leave mail uncollected. But you do not go past the post. You do not look for a house. You do not try to find her. And when she sends you things that make you want to go down there, you remember that making you want to come is the entire point. Who is she? I don't know. I've been delivering to that address for 22 years and I don't know. I've never seen her. I've never heard her. I've only ever seen what she leaves at the post. What did she leave you? Milo was quiet for a while. Things that were true, he said. Things about me that were true. Things I hadn't told anyone. She puts them in envelopes and leaves them for you like gifts, and they feel like gifts, and you want more of them, and that's when you have to stop wanting. What happens if you go past the post? I don't know. I never went. And I carried that route for 22 years, Darren. 22 years of her leaving me things that were so true they hurt, and I never went. You understand? I need you to understand that I'm not telling you this because I wasn't tempted. I'm telling you because I was tempted every single time, and I didn't go, and that's the only reason I'm sitting here talking to you. I thanked him. I hung up. I put the note from Fent next to the photograph in my bedside drawer, and I lay in the dark, and I thought about what Milo had said. Things that were true. The photograph had been true, verifiably, materially true. The note had been true in a different way, true the way a diagnosis is true, true in a way that I felt in my chest rather than confirmed with my eyes. I decided I would deliver the packages and collect the envelopes, and I would not go past the post. I made this decision clearly and firmly. I believed it. The fifth package arrived, and the fifth envelope was waiting. Inside was another photograph. This one showed me, but not as I was now. It showed me at maybe 19 or 20, sitting on the tailgate of my first truck, the blue Ford I'd owned before Rachel and I started dating. I was laughing at something off camera. The light was golden, late afternoon, summer. I remembered the truck. I remembered being that age. But I did not remember this photograph being taken. I had no memory of anyone pointing a camera at me in that moment, and I knew that no such photograph existed in any album or shoebox or hard drive I possessed. I had never seen this image before. It was a photograph of a real moment from my life that had never been captured. The sixth envelope contained a cassette tape. I don't own a cassette player, but I drove to the Goodwill in Harlan and bought one for $3, a dusty little portable unit, and I sat in the parking lot and played the tape. It was my mother's voice. My mother died in 2014. On the tape, she was talking to someone, not to me, to another adult, about a summer day when I was small, about finding me asleep in the garden with dirt on my hands, and the tenderness in her voice was so specific, so absolutely and unmistakably her, that I sat in that parking lot and cried for 20 minutes. This was not a recording I had ever possessed. My mother was not the kind of person who recorded herself. Nobody in my family owned recording equipment when I was a child. Fen had a recording of my dead mother's voice from a moment in the early 1980s. A recording that, as far as I knew, could not exist. I delivered the seventh and eighth packages in a state of increasing agitation. The envelopes kept coming. Each one contained something deeply, almost surgically personal. A scrap of paper with Rachel's handwriting on it, not anything she'd written to me, but something she'd written in a private journal, a passage about doubt, about the moment she first realized she might leave. How did Fen have a page from my ex-wife's journal? A photograph of my childhood bedroom taken from inside the closet, looking out, as though someone had been standing in my closet watching me sleep. A drawing, done in pencil, of a face I didn't recognize but felt that I should, a woman's face, middle-aged, with an expression of such profound and patient attention that looking at it made my skin tighten. Each envelope pulled me closer. Not to Grainer Hollow specifically, but to a state of need. I needed the next one. I needed to know what she would show me next, what hidden corner of my own life she would illuminate. It was not curiosity anymore. It was hunger. The envelopes were feeding something in me that I hadn't known was starving, a need to be fully known, to have the private architecture of my life witnessed and reflected back with perfect accuracy. Nobody had ever known me this completely. Not Rachel. Not my mother. Not myself. And that was the hook. I understood it even as it set. Making you want to come is the entire point. Milo had told me. The envelopes were not gifts. They were bait. And the bait was not lies or promises, the bait was truth. Perfect, intimate, irresistible truth. I stopped opening the envelopes. That's what I decided after the 8th delivery. I would collect them, I had to, that was the job, but I would not open them. I would bring them home and put them in the drawer and leave them sealed. I would starve the hunger by refusing to feed it. This worked for exactly 1 delivery. The 9th envelope was different. It was larger, heavier, and when I picked it up from the post, I could feel something rigid inside, like a card or a small frame. I brought it home. I put it in the drawer. I closed the drawer. I made dinner. I watched television. I went to bed. At 2 in the morning, I was standing in the kitchen with the envelope open in my hands, and I had no memory of getting out of bed. Inside was a photograph of a woman standing at the post in Grainer Hollow. She was facing the camera, facing me, and she was smiling. She was the woman from the pencil drawing. The same face, the same expression of patient attention, but rendered now in full color with the clarity of a high-quality print. She was perhaps 50, thin, with dark hair cut short and eyes that were, even in a photograph, uncomfortably direct. She was wearing a plain blue dress. Behind her, where the road ended and the woods began, there was a path that I had never noticed. A clear, well-maintained path leading down into the deeper hollow. On the back of the photograph, in that same small handwriting, "You've been so patient. I know what you lost." It wasn't Rachel. It wasn't your mother. It was the version of yourself that could still be found. Come down the path. I have it. I put the photograph down and washed my hands, and I stood at the sink, and I realized that my hands were shaking. Not with fear. With the effort of not going. Every part of me wanted to drive to Grainer Hollow in the dark and walk down that path. The wanting was so intense that it felt like a physical force, like a current in water, and standing still against it was exhausting. I called Milo. It was 2:30 in the morning. He answered on the first ring, as though he'd been waiting. She sent me a picture of herself, I said. I heard him breathe. Okay. There's a path. Behind the post. Going down into the hollow. I know about the path. She says she has something of mine. She always says that. She said it to me, too. For 22 years, Darren. She told me she had the thing my father tried to tell me before he died. She told me she had the name of the disease that was going to kill me so I could prevent it. She told me she had proof of God. She found the exact thing I needed most and she dangled it over the path like a light on a string. And I didn't go. How? Because I decided that some truths cost more than not knowing. But what if she's telling the truth? Everything she sent me has been true. I know. That's the worst part. I believe she does have what she says she has. I believe she has every true thing. And I believe the path goes somewhere real, and I believe she's really standing at the end of it. And I'm telling you not to go. Why? What happens? I told you. I don't know. Nobody I know has gone and come back to tell me. That sentence landed differently than he maybe intended. Nobody I know has gone and come back. That meant someone had gone. Maybe more than one person. I asked. There was a carrier before me, Milo said. Earl Dutton. He ran Route 7 in the 70s and 80s. Donna told me about him when I started. He delivered to Grainer Hollow for 15 years. Then one day he drove down there and didn't come back. They found his vehicle at the post. Engine off, keys in the ignition, his bag on the seat. No sign of Earl. No sign of anything wrong. He just walked down the path and that was it. They never found him. They never found a house. They sent people into that hollow, police, volunteers, dogs, and there was nothing there. Just woods and hills and silence. No house, no woman, no Earl. And they kept delivering there. The packages kept coming. Addressed to that address, with proper postage. You can't refuse to deliver properly posted mail, Darren. That's federal. The route book says deliver to the post, and that's what we do. I asked him one more question. The packages we deliver to her. What's in them? I don't know. I never opened one. I never even thought about opening one. He paused. That's not true. I never let myself think about opening one. There's a difference. I let him go back to sleep, if he'd been sleeping. I sat in my kitchen until dawn. I looked at the photograph of Fen, at her smile, at her eyes that seemed to know me so thoroughly that the glass of the camera lens was the only thing that had prevented a conversation. I looked at the path behind her, clear and maintained, going down into green darkness even though it was winter and nothing should have been green. Then I opened my laptop and I searched for every combination I could think of. Fen, Harlan County. Grainer Hollow, Kentucky. Stillhouse Road. Earl Dutton missing. I searched for hours. I found nothing about Fen or Grainer Hollow. But I found Earl Dutton. A brief newspaper clipping from 1989, digitized from the Harlan Daily Enterprise. Postal worker missing in rural area. The details matched what Milo had told me. Earl's vehicle found at the end of an unmaintained road. No sign of foul play. Search efforts unsuccessful. Case remained open. What caught my attention was a detail Milo hadn't mentioned. The article said that Earl Dutton's wife, when interviewed, reported that in the weeks before his disappearance, Earl had been receiving unmarked envelopes. She said he'd become increasingly preoccupied with their contents. She said he'd told her, the night before he vanished, that someone on his route knew the truth about their son. The Duttons had lost a child. A boy, age 6, in 1982. Drowning accident. This was in the article as background. Someone on Earl's route had known the exact wound, the exact need, and had offered to fill it. And Earl had walked down the path. I did not deliver the 10th package. I know what I said earlier about federal obligation and proper postage. I know. But I woke up that morning and I looked at the package in my sorting bin, same flat rate box, same address, same impossible zip, and I could not make myself put it in my vehicle. It was warm again. Warmer than before. And it was heavier, maybe 12 pounds, and when I lifted it, I felt something shift inside with a weight that was not the weight of objects. I don't know how to explain that. It moved the way something alive moves, with a settling, adjusting quality, finding its balance inside the box. I put it back in the bin. I told Donna I'd missed the Grainer Hollow stop because of road conditions and I'd get it tomorrow. She looked at me, and I saw something in her face that I hadn't seen before, relief. Like she'd been waiting for me to find a reason not to go. That night, the phone rang at 11. I answered. The line was open, I could hear ambient sound, a faint hiss, the quality of an open space, but no one spoke. I said hello 3 times. On the 4th time, I heard breathing. Not heavy, not theatrical. Calm, patient breathing. Someone listening. Is this Fen? I said. The breathing continued. Then, very softly, a woman's voice, you didn't come today. No. You're afraid. Yes. That's all right. Fear is just the shape that care takes when it doesn't know where to go. A pause. You care about this, Darren. About knowing. You've always cared about knowing. It's why Rachel left, not because you stopped caring, but because you cared about the wrong things. About understanding instead of feeling. You wanted to know her instead of love her. And now you want to know me, and the difference is, I want to be known. I should have hung up. I need you to understand how completely I should have hung up. But her voice was, I don't have the right word. It was like hearing a thought you've had 1,000 times spoken aloud by someone else for the first time. It was intimate in a way that bypassed every defense I had. Not seductive. Not warm, even. Just accurate. She spoke to me the way my own mind speaks to me in the moments before sleep, when I'm too tired to lie to myself. What are you? I asked. I'm a woman who lives in a hollow in Harlan County, she said. I've lived here a long time. People bring me things, and I give them things in return. That's all. What do people bring you? What they want to get rid of. What do you give them? What they can't get anywhere else. And the packages. The ones I deliver. What's in them? I think you know. I thought about the warmth. The weight. The way things shifted inside with the quality of settling life. People send you things they want to get rid of, I said slowly. Through the mail. Through you. You're the carrier. You carry things from them to me. What kind of things? The kind that come in packages that are warm to the touch, Darren. The kind that weigh more than they should. The kind you can feel moving. I felt sick. Not metaphorically. My stomach clenched and I set the phone down and breathed for a minute, staring at the ceiling. When I picked it up again, she was still there, breathing patiently. I'm not delivering any more packages to you. That's your choice. But they'll keep coming. They've been coming for a very long time. Before you, before Milo, before Earl. There has always been a carrier. There will always be a carrier. Because there will always be people who have things they need to send away, and there will always be a place willing to receive them. What happens to the people who walk down the path? They find what they're looking for. Earl Dutton. Earl found what he was looking for. His wife never saw him again. No. But that's not the same as saying he was lost. I hung up. I sat in the dark. I thought about the packages, all the packages, not just the ones I'd carried but the ones before me, the years and decades of flat-rate boxes with impossible zip codes and no return addresses, all warm, all heavy, all settling with the weight of things that people had put inside and sent to a place that didn't show up on maps. I thought about what kind of thing a person puts in a box and mails to a woman in a hollow when the thing they're sending is warm and alive and they want to get rid of it. And I thought about what Fen had said about Rachel. You wanted to know her instead of love her. And I thought about how that was true in a way that I had never admitted to anyone, least of all myself. I had studied Rachel the way I studied Milo's route book, meticulously, obsessively, cataloging her quirks and patterns and preferences, mapping her the way you map a road, until I knew everything about her and understood nothing. I had made her into information. And she had left because she wanted to be a person, not a territory. Fen knew this about me. She knew it because knowing was what she did, the way carrying was what I did. She was the destination. I was the route. And the packages were the things that moved between people who couldn't bear to keep them and a place that wanted nothing else. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I went to the post office. The package was still in the bin. It was warmer. I could feel the heat from 6 inches away, and when I stood close, I heard, or thought I heard, a sound from inside. Not movement. Something more like a vibration, a hum, the frequency of a living thing in a small space. I picked it up. I carried it to my vehicle. I drove Route 7. But I did not go to Grainer Hollow. I drove the entire route, every stop, every mailbox, every dog-defended driveway. And at the end, where I should have turned onto Cali Fork Road, I kept going straight. I drove past the turnoff. I drove to the post office. I put the package back in the bin. And I wrote a note to Donna that said, I can't carry Route 7 anymore. Please find someone else for Grainer Hollow. The next morning, Donna called me in early. She was sitting behind her desk with her glasses off, rubbing the bridge of her nose, looking older than I'd ever seen her. You know I can't leave that stop unsupervised, she said. I know. And there's nobody else. Milo's out for at least 2 more months. Then hold the packages. We can't hold them. You saw what Milo's book says. Do not hold. Do not return. Then send them back. There's no return address, Darren. Then throw them away. Donna looked at me for a long time. You opened the envelopes, she said. Yes. And she called you. I stared at her. You know about the calls. She called Earl. She called Milo, 4 years. She called me once, in 1995, when I was the one covering the route during Milo's vacation. Donna put her glasses back on. She told me what happened to my sister. My sister went missing in 1978. Nobody ever found out what happened. Fen told me. She told me everything, where, how, who. All I had to do was come down to the hollow and she'd give me proof. Evidence. Enough to put someone in prison. Her voice was steady but her hands, on the desk, were not. And I didn't go. And I've lived with that for 31 years. I've lived with knowing that the woman who killed my sister is still alive, and that the proof is sitting at the bottom of a hollow that I will never walk into. How do you do it? Because I watched what it did to Earl. The wanting. The needing. It ate him from the inside out for years before he went, and when he finally walked down that path, the man I saw leave that morning was not the man I'd hired. He was just a need in the shape of a person. Whatever she gives you, it costs more than what you get. It has to. Nothing that hungry gives anything for free. She told me to take the day off. She told me she'd figure out Grainer Hollow. She told me to go home and not open any envelopes and not answer any calls. I did as she said. I went home. I sat in my kitchen. The drawer in my bedside table held the photograph, the note, the cassette tape, the page from Rachel's journal, the picture of my childhood bedroom, the drawing, the picture of Fen, and 5 or 6 other envelopes I hadn't mentioned because describing each one would take more time than I have. Each one a precision instrument. Each one a key cut to fit a lock I didn't know I had. I put them all in a grocery bag. I drove to the county dump. I threw them away. And standing at the edge of the dump, watching the bag disappear into the compactor, I felt something detach from me. Not dramatically. Quietly. The way a leech lets go when you touch it with salt, a small, wet release, a sense of something that had been attached so closely you'd stopped feeling it as separate. The hunger eased. The need to know, the need to be known, the craving for that perfect and terrible intimacy, it loosened. Not gone. Loosened. I drove home. The phone rang at 9 that night. I let it ring. It rang for 45 minutes, and then it stopped, and then it didn't ring again. Milo came back to work in April. I gave him his route book back. He took it without comment. We stood in the parking lot and I said, "Are you going to keep delivering there?" "It's my route," he said. "You don't have to." "Yeah," he said. "I do." And the way he said it, not defeated, not brave, just factual, made me understand that Milo had made a different peace with it than I had. He had decided that carrying the packages and enduring the envelopes was the cost of the route, the way bad roads and hostile dogs were the cost of the route. He would carry and he would not go. That was his deal, negotiated over 22 years, and he would keep it until he retired or died. I went back to my old route. I delivered to the roads between Harlan and Cranks, the roads I'd been avoiding, and the first time I drove past the turnoff to Rachel's mother's house, I felt something that was not pain and not relief but something in between. Recognition, maybe. The recognition that I had been trying to know the unknowable, Rachel, Fen, myself, and that the trying was a road that didn't go anywhere, or worse, went somewhere real that you couldn't come back from. I want to tell you that's the end, and in the version of this story where I am braver and more honest, it would be. But there's one more thing. 3 weeks after I stopped carrying Route 7, I got a package at my home address. Not at the post office, at my house. In my mailbox. A small flat rate box, no return address, zip code 40831. My name, my address, my impossible zip. It was not warm. It was cold. So cold that condensation formed on the cardboard when I brought it inside, and holding it made my fingers ache. It weighed almost nothing. There was nothing shifting inside. I should not have opened it. I know that. But the envelopes were gone and the hunger was quiet, and I told myself that opening one last thing, one final thing, would let me close the book on Grainer Hollow forever. Inside was a small glass jar with a screw-on lid. Inside the jar was a folded piece of paper. I unscrewed the lid. The cold intensified, the jar was the source of it, radiating cold the way the packages to Fen had radiated warmth. I unfolded the paper. It was a birth certificate. It looked old, authentic, printed on the heavy stock that Kentucky used in the 1950s. The name on it was Esther Alice Fen. Date of birth, March 3, 1932. Place of birth, Grainer Hollow, Harlan County, Kentucky. Mother, Alice Ruth Fen. Father, unknown. Below the printed information, in handwriting I now recognized, was a single line. Now you know me, too. That's how this works. Fair is fair. I stood in my kitchen holding a birth certificate for a woman born 94 years ago who sounded, on the phone, no older than 50. A woman who lived in a hollow that didn't appear on any map, who received warm packages full of things people couldn't bear to keep, who fed on the need to know and repaid it with truths so perfect they were indistinguishable from love. I put the birth certificate back in the jar. I put the jar on the shelf above my refrigerator. It's still cold. It's been 2 months and it's still cold, and sometimes at night, when the house is quiet, I can hear a faint hum coming from inside it, the same frequency I heard from the packages, the vibration of a living thing in a small space. I haven't gone back to Grainer Hollow. I haven't answered any calls from numbers I don't recognize. I haven't opened any unexpected mail. I've been careful. I've been disciplined. I've been everything Milo was for 22 years. But here's what keeps me awake. Fen said, "Now you know me, too." She gave me her name, her birth date, her origin. She made the knowing reciprocal. Before, the flow was one-directional. She knew me, I didn't know her. Now we know each other. And I don't understand what that means, but I understand that it changes something, the way knowing someone's name in a fairy tale changes something. It creates a bond. A line. A route. I am, after all, a carrier. That's what I do. I move things between points. And I can feel it now, a faint pull, barely there, like a current in still water. Not toward Grainer Hollow. Toward something else. Toward a knowledge I didn't ask for and can't give back. I know her name. I know where she was born. I know what she does. And she knows everything about me, every hidden room, every locked drawer, every truth I've buried so deep I forgot it was there. We are known to each other. And I think that might be worse than anything that could have happened on the path. Because the path would have been an ending. This is something else. This is an open line. And on quiet nights, when the jar hums on its shelf and the house settles around me and I'm alone with everything I know and everything that knows me back, I can feel the distance between us not as space but as tension. The tautness of a string between 2 points. And I wonder if one day the tension will be enough, if one day the string will pull taut enough to move me without my deciding, the way I found myself standing in the kitchen at 2 in the morning with an envelope open in my hands and no memory of getting out of bed. I wonder if knowing is its own path, and I'm already on it. And I wonder what's in the packages. I still wonder. I will always wonder. That's the string she left in me, not the one that leads to Grainer Hollow, but the one that ties me to every warm box in every sorting bin, every piece of mail with no return address, every question that can't be answered without walking somewhere you can't come back from. Milo carries the route. The packages still come. And somewhere at the bottom of a hollow in Harlan County, past a post with no mailbox, down a path that shouldn't be green in winter, there is a woman who has been receiving things for a very long time. Things that are warm. Things that move. Things that people put in boxes and send to a place that doesn't show up on maps because some things can only go to places that aren't supposed to exist. I delivered those things. I carried them. And now I know where they went, and that knowledge is a weight I carry too, every day, on a route that doesn't end when I park the vehicle and go inside and lock the doors and tell myself I'm home. There is a jar on my shelf that hums. There is a woman in a hollow who knows my name. There is a path I didn't take and a string I can't cut. And every morning, when I start my route, I drive past the turnoff to Cali Fork Road, and I don't turn, and I don't turn, and I don't turn. But the road is always there.